What I'm going to talk now is about sorrow. It may sound like a negative subject to talk about, but today I feel like to talk about it because yes, the world is going through very a bigger sorrow right now, and there are many sorrows and sufferings in this world. At this moment, this pandemic has come out as a new form of sorrow. Okay, and let us reflect on what sorrow is. According to Indian philosophical thinking, what is sorrow and what is the nature of sorrow and how many types of sorrows are there in life and what we can do to not eradicate, because complete eradication is sorrow is impossible as long as we are in this phenomenal world, this material world. But of course, the acharyas say that our sorrows and sufferings can be alleviated, or we can insulate our consciousness against the intensity of sorrows affecting our life. According to Indian philosophical thinking, there are three types of sorrows. It's called tapatraya, three types of sorrows. Adhyatmic suffering, Adi Bhaudik suffering, and Adi Daivik suffering. What is this? First of all, we'll discuss what is Adhyatmic suffering. Adhyatmic suffering is more important because it happens from our own self. It is self-inflicted suffering. And most of our suffering is self-inflicted. Usually mental suffering. We cause so much mental suffering to ourselves and also physical suffering. How we cause physical suffering is because not properly taking care of our body, neglecting that is our the health of our body by eating wrong kind of food, consuming intoxicants, not giving body needed exercise in the form of manual labor, and those who are not doing manual labor as profession, the need of doing some form of exercise form to keep their body fit. Also the mental afflictions we cause by indulging in thoughts and actions which are destructive to the harmony of the mind. So this most of the adhyatmic suffering is avoidable. Okay. This adhyatmic suffering happens mainly because of our attitude to life and life events. What yoga philosophy does is to change our attitude, our concepts about life. Every one of us has a certain idea about life, whether it's a scientist or a philosopher or a politician or a sports person. Everybody has got a personal philosophy of life. And all of them believe in that, because without a belief in a personal philosophy of how to live a life, one cannot go on in life. So everyone construct their own philosophy. Even those who denounce philosophy as a mere fanciful thinking or verbal jugglery, they too have a philosophy of life of how to behave, how to reach goals, how to conduct oneself in society. So a clean philosophical thinking, a pure sattvic philosophical thinking is, it's in a canon, you know. It's necessary to alleviate this adhyatmic suffering. Let's next one is we'll talk more about adhyatmic suffering, self-inflicted suffering more. Before that, let's go to the next one. Adi Bhaudik suffering. This suffering comes from other Buddhas, other living beings. from other people. It's unavoidable. Other people will give us joy and sorrow, pleasure and pain, help at the same time, some actions which can be detrimental to our well-being. It happens. We should be mentally prepared also to get suffering from other, not just humans, it could be from other animals. Right now, what is going on is we can compare it with the adipodic suffering, what this SARS-CoV-2 virus is doing. It's another, it virus is not a living being, it says, science says, but still, there's, I think it is not life, it's not even a life form still. Maybe we can include it in Adi Daivik. Anyway, still this is happening. So it's coming from another form of life, and we are suffering. And the phenomenal world, the material world, scientific world is trying to find solution to it through vaccines and medicines. That is a solution. From that point of view, that is a solution for that. But when I speak, don't misconstrue that I am a pessimist. Optimism is the only better choice for humans, but it's not pessimism, but reality is reality. Before being optimistic or pessimistic, just be realistic first. Then one virus, one organism, one pathogen is destroyed or found cure, medicine for that, another one forms. Even the scientific community agrees. Always war ready. War never ends. War keep on going. And so we become war weary. And we become war weary, we become yogis. Okay? We need to, because the first condition to be a yogi, or the first condition to have a spiritual state of mind, is world weariness, disinterest in material life. It is not denouncing material life. So because when we talk about renouncing material life, many people see it as a sort of negative thinking or escapism. It is not so. We are living in this world, but at the same time, our understanding of the world is changed. The attitude is changed. What is the benefit of that? We have a better quality of life. What could be the better quality of life? Undisturbed consciousness, a blissful existence, irrespective of what happens in life. There's a concept of personality in Bhagavad Gita called Sthita Prajna personality. Who is a Sthita Prajna? One who doesn't move, whether it's pain or pleasure, whether it's happiness or sorrow. Of course, the skeptics always will say, this is a lofty ideal. This is a fanciful thinking. How can there be a person who cannot be moved by pain, who cannot be moved by pleasure, who cannot be elated with happiness? Well, this is not simply a path of roses to just walk in. It is a path full of thorns and pitfalls. We have to practice, we have to have a determined practice and deep awareness to reach such a state. Yes, that state is possible. So this adibhautic suffering comes from the other living beings. So second suffering is there. The third one is adi-daivik suffering. Of course, the term itself says it's from Daiva. It's not just from God. It simply says it can be from the universe, from nature, from the unknown, from the mystery. Suddenly something happens. And there's also a concept in yoga also that is called Vikshepa Sahabhavaha. That means what happened, I can explain it this way, that we suppose there's a period of health. The body is feeling great. We feel the energy in our body. We feel complete well-being, and the mind is also very calm. Mental health is so good. We feel so good. The period is good. Suddenly something goes wrong. Suddenly people say, I was healthy till yesterday. Suddenly I had a bath, or I went under the rain, or I had too much sun. Now I feel severe headache. I have a slight fever. Oh, I feel terrible. Or simply we are walking through the road, suddenly we didn't see the gutter, we just fell into it. We had an ankle sprain. No suffering. This is Viksheva Sahabhavaha. So this can happen anytime in our life. Anytime in our life. So Buddha says Pain is the outcome of pleasure. In Buddhism or Buddha, some people wrongly term him as a pessimist or Buddhism as a philosophy. I'm not talking about Buddhism, but just I'm trying to just bringing an example. It is not because it's seeing reality as it is, because the pain and sorrow lurks every corner in our life. We have to be aware of that. Then only we can catch a little tranquility, not happiness, because even happiness and pleasure is also disturbing in another sense. So what through yoga thoughts, what we try to reach, not achieve, we try to reach is that a state of mind which is compared to a lake which is tranquil. There is no ripples in the lake. Okay, so that I think it's Swami Vivekananda who has given this comparison of a mind free from all the disturbance, the yogi mind, that there is no ripples. There is no ripples in the water, in the lake. It's so calm and so clear that when we look, we can see everything underneath the lake, the pebbles, the small fishes, the twig, the leaves. When it is disturbed, when a boat moves, or there is heavy rain and thunderstorm, the water is muddy, then we can see nothing. Our mind is compared to a disturbed lake. When the mind is disturbed, we cannot see what exactly it is, what is inside. Our mind is not just filled with survival instinct or anger or lust or so-called love in another sense of part of extreme romantic love. It is not just that. Our mind is also filled with the divinity. Our mind is also filled with calmness. Our mind, our consciousness, I would say consciousness, our consciousness or self, its true nature or Swarupa Avastha is tranquility, integrity, harmony. This is the highest state we as human beings can achieve in this world. There is no other state than complete harmony and peace and contentment in life. It is the acharyas say that whatever we achieve in this phenomenal world, material world, unless we reach this state of mind, our life is a waste. And it is not after death moksha is expected. The Charvakas, our ancient Indian materialist philosophers, atheist philosophers, they used to say that it's been stated that they did not believe in so-called liberation or moksha. They said death is moksha. Only death will liberate us from this. No, the yogic philosophy believes that before death, we have to experience this sense of liberation or moksha from the shackles of worldly experiences. It is not, once again I repeat, it is not about running away from one's duty as a social being, not running away from one's job, not running away from our dharma as to our family or friends. It is about being in this world at the same time, not getting attached to it. Okay? It is the yogi mind. When this is possible for even a householder, it is not just for a person who renounced life and wearing the garb of a sannyasi or sage. We can be in this world at the same time. We can be detached and function. I remember one sentence in a book that Mahatma Ji has once said, "Renounce and enjoy." I think it is Mahatma Gandhi who said, "Renounce and enjoy." Renunciation. If we are detached with something, we'll see that particular object or a person or a situation in a much more comprehensive way. Not through the way we want it to be, because our mind is free, attachment is not there. So we think the situation as it is, so that our judgment becomes clear. So the actions will be much more appropriate. So maybe I moved away from the topic, but let's come back to Adi Bhautik, Adi Daivik suffering. So these things can happen anytime: tsunami, a pandemic, a flood, a drought. anything can happen at any moment. So these three sufferings pursue us in every day, in every moment. We are all very bold, courageous people that we can laugh and we can make merriment and be in this world. And even though these sufferings is lurking everywhere. So how to overcome? Now I have told you about sufferings. I have painted a bleak picture, maybe a thing like that. But I should also tell what is how to overcome this suffering. Yes, like our scientific community says, there is a way of finding vaccines for each and every virus comes. There's a possibility of finding surgical methods or treatment options, medicines for every disease and disorders and accidents, traumas happening in life. So that is a way that sort of inquiry should go on. But at the same time, it will never end. That keep on going. Yes, that part of our life should go that way. That path also should be traveled. But at the same time, there's another path is also there to overcome the suffering in another way. That is another way to overcome the suffering is to raise our consciousness to the mind-body complex. It has to raise it to a transcendental level. It is about sitting loose in life. Have an acceptance of everything happens in life. The rejection gives more pain. A disease, a diagnosis of a dreaded disease in our body, of course, it has two ways, it gives two kind of suffering. First of all, the suffering of the body, the pain and distress. Also the intense pain of the consciousness that why I have this suffering, why me? I've been doing everything perfect. I never smoked, I never drank, I ate the right food, I was careful, I didn't hit anybody. We can hear this kind of conversation even from the so-called educated people. Why me? I've been living a good life. I've never done, but these things happen to me. So the stress, this has to be overcome. I like to tell an example of this worldly stuff, how yogis response attitude to a big suffering he encountered. Because I'm talking about Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. We all know that he passed away at the age of 50 due to, I think it's throat. He couldn't eat anything, just lying. And sometimes he would be given some form watery something. So so his students came. His students came and asked him, okay. So let us look at how great yogi responded to a great affliction which happened to his body. I'm talking about Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, and he was afflicted with the throat cancer, and he was suffering greatly, and there was big swelling around his throat, and he could not eat, and he was given some watery substance often. So his disciples and well-wishers were around him. And some of his close disciples went to him and asked, Guruji, you are a great devotee of Kali. Why don't you pray to her to alleviate this suffering, so that he can eat something? You've not been eating for many days. So Sri Ramakrishna said, okay, of course. I would ask her and tell you what she told me. So the next day they came, and when the disciples came to him, he said, you see, I asked Kali, why don't you help me? Why don't you alleviate my suffering so that I can eat something? And you know what she said? She said, how can you be so selfish, so unintelligent? Because you are eating through all this mouth in this world. Why do you want to eat through this mouth? Maybe it was the maybe it was an opinion and idea Sri Ramakrishna invented. But the thing what we understand, see, for a skeptic, this answer it may sound silly. A skeptic may think that, oh, this Sri Ramakrishna concocted this idea just to answer something. Not so. Those who know the transcendental philosophical system of India, they can understand why he said like that. Because a person who is spiritually evolved will have the capacity to realize the unity of the universe. And such an evolved person can realize the reality of the world. As long as we are in this matter, as long as we are in this body which is matter, it is bound to decay and disintegrate. What we are trying to do is keep prolonging its existence. There is nothing wrong with that. Yes, of course, in modern day, people live long compared to the old days. Most people can extend life to up to 70, 80 because of our advanced medical system. But still, suffering is there. Suffering is there in the form of disease and many other things. Okay. So this was spiritual understanding of the true nature of life. And also when suffering comes, do we have the capacity to go through it? Of course, when something happens, we have no other choice. It's not our choice that it happens. We all will go through that, but through greater suffering. With bodily suffering, with also the mental agony of thought that such a thing has happened. No. So the only solution from the yogic point of view, the world is full of suffering. When we say yoga is a soteriological science, a science of liberation, and yogi sees the world as full of sorrow. He knows intuitively that whatever we do, this just changes the form. Tuberculosis was there, it was killing. He found anti-tuberculosis tests. There are many reserve drugs, isoniazid, ethambutol, rifampicin, pyrazinamide, those reserve drugs. Yes, even though it damages, it has some side effects, still it cures if detected in time. But still we found there is new diseases can come up. Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome has come. For the last 35 years, we have not been able to do anything about it. Still research is going on. Suffering's nature is changed. There was no medicine for typhoid in the early part of the 20th century. Now typhoid can be treated even by a general practitioner in his clinic. So what I'm trying, so of course there is progress, but still there is suffering. A SARS-CoV-2 has come, or some other virus is going to come. So yes, we can say that is life. This is life. We can simply, we have a reductionist view that this is part of life. Okay, let's accept it. Of course, the acharyas also talk about the accepting things, but accepting things not in a glib way, with a deeper understanding. And so it is not a solution. It is a better option. The yogic option. It's not I'm not saying better option. Everyone is free to have their own options in life. But the yogic option is that to raise our level of consciousness to such a plane that when these things befall on us, the Sufi Saint Allama Iqbal, I think that's Allama Iqbal, he says that what is a sign of a spiritually evolved person? And he said, when death comes to him, he has a smile on his lips. It is not a nervous smile. It is not a smile of fear. It is a smile of great understanding that yes, I know this is it. but I am going back to something where I came from. Yes, it is a philosophical thinking. It is not a laboratory proved fact. It is part of intuitive knowledge. It's part of intuitive knowledge, that is direct perception of truth, which has been explained by those acharyas or teachers of our past. So with that, I like to conclude my today's talk. Thank you.